difficult. So very much a lot of eyes there for them if they're going to be successful against Ballistix.
Yeah, potential option back when Rhaegar was the top of the meta. This is when ZJZ was so ZJH was so high in the standings, where he was able to play that aggressive style and able to out-micro people, even when Lucio was up there. But nowadays, when we have the Decades and the Malfurions, he becomes a little bit more... He's used to playing that aggressive style, not so much the passive style.
Yeah, and it's actually really difficult to learn how to adapt to that. I would say, I mean, it's a very different meta than when I was playing, obviously, in a very different game to a certain extent, but there are some elements of that that do exist, and it's just identifying what your win conditions are within skirmishes. That's what Rhaegar's, Uthers, you know, those ones kind of very heavily focus on, but Malfurions and Deckards are more adaptive and kind of on the fly, and I can't help but feel like that is the missing element here for ZZH. I don't think it's out of his, you know, capabilities as a player. He's shown he has those tools, but I can't help but feel like it's been, again, a bit of miss recently.
Well, we'll have to see. For now, though, once again, you can all vote in chat as to who you think will win. If you think it will once again be Korea with the victory, it is hashtag BLX for Ballistix. But if you think that China can just take just one, then it is hashtag SPT, standing for Super Perfect Team.
You're going to need to be super perfect.
They're going to have to be able to take games off of Ballistix.
What if they were perfectly super, though?
I'm not sure how that works, you know? I'm no syntax master here. Yeah, I'm trying to.
I mean, the word cell comes to mind, but that's about it. That's as far as I can go there. But either way, we still got to have concern for what the maps will be, especially. There are maps that back in earlier league play, SPT were basically undefeated on. Dragonshire is one that sprung to mind. They started to struggle on Battlefield, which used to be one of their top ones, but seems to flail a little bit once we came to this phase. Whereas Ballistix, they also have their own favorites.
I think it was a really interesting point, you know, the Dragonshire being the focus into the past, because not only do I feel like Korean teams right now are the best at applying that top lane pressure, that was a Chinese strategy originally, kind of bring that to light, but also you're talking about the teamfight J-How and what needs to be brought there. And even though Battlefield of Eternity is maybe on the weaker end of SPT's battleground pool, I look at that and I go, avoid Dragonshire. Way too much macro, way too many rotations. You're going to get ganked by Ballistix. Focus on things like Battlefield of Eternity and just go, time to fight, boys.
The other map that should potentially be avoided is the Tomb of the the Towers of Doom, sorry. It's not banned. That is a map that, Towers of Doom is a map that is 4-0 for Ballistix at the moment, but it is let through, and we're going to be heading to Sky Temple, a bit more of a neutral map for these two teams.
Well, it's also a map that we've seen historically Ballistix do incredibly well on. They had a good start earlier against Gen G, but then they started to falter. I think that this would favor that style, but SPT is the pick on this. I think it was Ballistix that picked that earlier against Gen G. Obviously, they got the good start. They just had a rough finish, and I think this is a very strong map for Ballistix. I am curious on if SPT might have something globally to deal with. Falstad comes to mind for both of these teams, and the way that they play, there's some more strategies that you and I have seen specifically with Ballistix, with the Mighty Gust 7-sided strike combos that we generally do, the isolation style. So I am curious, draft-wise, more for both of these teams than I am more on the map. As you said, it is a very neutral map, but I think draft is very telling as well.
And you mentioned drafts. This is actually, I talked about it earlier, the map where we did see SPT bring out their Bloodlust Maiev Warden's Cage combo for the very first time. So we were talking about aggression. If this is a map they wanted to try it on, they could definitely do so, especially with that boss control being a very high point of contention.
It definitely is a map where they can get the team fights to be able to get the advantage that they need. But I think the biggest thing to point out, if that is going to be focused and knowing that we're going to this battleground, I immediately go, if SPT cannot make it to the second Shrine phase at a dead even footing, and I mean not losing, you know, the team fight down below and find themselves behind after that, they need to be dead even at the end of those shots, and then I think there might be an opportunity. And that means structures as well. But if they fail on any front, that is going to be the snowball of the one-level lead, and then what you see is the macro dominance. Sky Temple is a map where you get the lead through teamfights, but you keep control of the game through the macro. So they absolutely need to find a way to, again, be able to go toe-to-toe at that second Shrine.
Yeah, those macro heroes going to be insanely important. We look to those globals. Dahaka, once again, very popular. You mentioned the Falstad earlier, a hero who we have not seen too much this tournament, but has poked his head in terms of the bans every now and again.
Both teams, I think, have played this in the most recently in the phase, and especially in the last few times that we've seen Ballistix on this. When you don't get the Falstad available, then you start to look at things like Junkrat, because post 13, it's not necessarily a global. You can hop around the map a little using your concussion mine, bouncing around to and fro. But I think the Falstad, if it doesn't get banned in the second ban slot, look for it in the later part of the draft.
Well, let's find out, as we're going to be heading into that draft, the early part of it this time, as it is going to be Ballistix versus Super Perfect Team. Can Super Perfect Team be perfect as we head to the Sky Temple. And it is going to be Ballistix with the first ban.
Find ourselves without the Korea versus Korea, so maybe a Genji slipping through this draft here. And if so, you can expect Ballistix to be willing to pick that up for themselves. It's a good battleground for him with the skirmishes. As I say that, SPT says nah.
Yeah. China is the same priority on the Genji in terms of, yeah, no thank you if possible. It is banned in basically every single game out there.
Obviously, we take off the general Abathur, making sure that there's no weirdness that happens. Obviously, the mule, the last remaining mule.
Yeah, it's a sad story, isn't it?
Yeah, you know who all, you know what we saw earlier on that Nazebo? Ice Blood.
Yeah, that's a dying breed as well at this point.
It will be after this weekend. Thanks, Reset.
Well, we will keep an eye on that, see if that does continue. If not, it would be nice to see more Nazebo. Who knows? We'll keep an eye throughout the tournament as Maiev is banned out. Once again, just an incredibly scary hero and part of that original SPT combo. Yeah,
not only does it remove that original combo, but I think it removes one of those few fears that we have with the raw teamfight skirmishing. Maiev is a single-handed, you know, she can turn the teamfight single-handedly. And it very much is, again, through that teamfighting and skirmishing. I think it's very safe to be able to kind of stall that out and be able to remove that there in the second ban for Ballistix. And then keeping it classy here with the Jimmy Rayner up in the first pick.
Dibbles Deckard, the insane playmaking there. You know, the one thing that does work out well, we've seen very good Rayners. They can use their penetrating round to get that knockback on the devastating charge. It's just been so much control between a Diablo, between a Deckard. Not too surprising we don't get a Phoenix in that slot for SPT, as you know, sometimes they have other things in mind, but getting that type of control with your first two picks, very, very strong.
Yeah, it's a nice synergy for the Rayner as well, but there's more than enough to go around with that Muradin and Blaze. But I do actually like that SPT are picking up that Diablo. Back in the league play, they really seemed to struggle in the earlier weeks with their Muradin. Every time they got that Diablo, they played a little bit more aggressive and were able to pick up a lot more kills and actually take victories. The early stage of this year was potentially SPT's worst performance in a standard league play that has ever been seen.
Let's see, wait a minute here. We get ourselves a Thrall ban. Interesting to be able to see that.
Yeah.
I wonder what they're trying to be able to avoid here with that taken off the table.
It's more synergy for the Rayner, for starters. But other than that, the potential for just... They already have a solo laner with the Blaze. That is an interesting ban.
Hanzo is available. Phoenix is available. Hanzo now no longer available. Phoenix now rises to the top of the heap when we look at the ranged auto attacks. In terms of our standard play, we'll see if SPT maybe has some tricks up their sleeve. Instead, they keep it standard to Haka Phoenix. I can't imagine that Ballistix doesn't maybe pick up Falstad. See if they get the Kharazim in the rotation for that single target blow up on a Diablo if he chooses to dive in.
It's a little bit more difficult if they do go the Kharazim route than most of the other synergies that we've seen. They do have the Muradin to dive in, the Blaze to dive in, but Jimmy doesn't have always the best follow-up to that type of situation. But, I mean, either way, I think Ballistix would be very comfortable if they do end up getting that. Magi actually going with what he knows best, though. Probably his best performing support there. Committing to the Stukov, and we're going to have SDE there on a classic Tychus.
No globals. Taking the risk of just trusting their own rotations and potentially trusting their team fights. So a potential risky move into a Chinese team, but it is SPT here. That Tychus is going to be effective against that Tahaka, against that Diablo. Potential disruption on the Phoenix teleport if you can time that grenade right.
Well, it's crazy to think about because... Oh!
There we go. So
interesting.
Well, Melody C was one of the few first players in this in HGC China to bring that Medivh to play. It was mostly on Battlefield at the time where they would just try and make crazy portal plays. But Diablo Portal, we know exactly how terrifying this can be.
It's definitely got a lot of opportunities is the best way to put it, I feel like, with that Medivh pickup for SPT. But it also is going to demand an absolutely absurd amount of, number one, understanding of win conditions and power spikes at the battleground, especially with the momentum that we're going to see Ballistix get. And then it's, again, the coordination throughout the skirmishes. I like the pick, and I feel like it's something that I wish we would get more here at the Eastern Clash. But that's one of those picks where I go, yes, this may be the go-to for SPT, but I go, is it really the tool that they're going to have to win those fights? Because I can't help but feel like one portal play, somebody messes up a little bit, and that dead even fight I wanted on bottom is just not going to be found.
And there's still a stock of silence underneath the portal as well. If you can land a good virulent reaction, then suddenly that engage tool you have turns into your own demise, delivering yourself on a purple platter, as it were.
It can also act as a life preserver, because it's like, look, I'm drowning in this giant lurking arm. Please save me. You put the portal portal down, obviously, you know, post 13, very different story. But if you can get through that that does give you the escape option. For Diablo, he's going to get ripped apart. I mean, you get the healing, or excuse me, you get the shielding. Obviously, there are some talents you can go into. But the damage is going to be there. The problem is it's more sustain-oriented. Tychus has some burst with that minigun. Obviously, you can pull off of that. But I am worried about the fact that can you keep him alive when it comes to the sustain portion of that, which is obviously where the support role comes in. But Medivh is going to be more about the setup potential, the saving potential, but the amount of control that they have, and we could get the old APOC outside of the ley line there, and so there are some playmaking potentials for that Medivh.
But one thing we got to bring up was one of the first times that we saw North America run that combo. You know, it's not the only region that's run it, but definitely one of the more prominent ones with Roll20 in the past. They got the MVP victory, right? What was the first thing that MVP Black did immediately after to be able to respond to it? Drop the Tychus. So even if we see that end up picking up, I feel like SDE, and knowing he's going to be on the Tychus, is one of the best tools to mitigate that major wombo, be able to turn the skirmishes around. So again, I like the survivability, like the coordination it's going to require, but it feels like, again, Ballistix was not too concerned seeing the Medivh.
But even outside of that wombo combo potential, that hard engage with the portal, there's also the potential for playing the map. Once again, Ballistix, they went no globals versus a Dahaka, taking that risk.
Well, the thing about Dahaka is when you play the global, so there's the control, right? But then there's also the can we get a pick? And if you early game try and use Brunstalker, try and get a pick early, and you don't get that pick, then you're going to lose that soak in the other lanes. So there is the risk factor in the early part of the game that, look, if you're willing to commit that global and you don't get the kill, then all of a sudden that global value diminishes drastically in the early game. So I am curious on how aggressive they want to be in the early game. And then obviously later game, you know those are more valuable. But the early game play is going to be paramount, I think, to their success, getting that global value.
Well, early game play is something we have seen a lot from the Chinese teams, with BTG able to take first blood basically every single time versus Blossom. But the question is, can SPT do the same? We do have a very quick technical issue. We'll get you into the game as soon as possible. But until then, is there anyone else you guys would like to highlight in terms of this draft?
The discipline of Masaka, for me,
is going, I mean, in
early game, you cannot risk. I mean, you go in, look, minigun obviously gets more and more value, the more souls that Diablo gets, higher health pool, you know, yada, yada. But still early game, you're not super squish. I mean, Diablo's squishy, right? I think his base health is somewhere around 2,700 in that general area. Yep. So it's pretty tanky at start. But then you start to run into, okay, if I'm early and I'm nowhere near as tanky as I thought I would be, especially pre-level 4, on those first few temple phases, or the first temple phase in particular, if you go in at all, it might be highly unlikely that you come out unless Medivh is there to save you. And post-6, it's not until you get to 16 when you get the more portal time, but it's just a matter of if you go in at all, you better hope that you are coordinated enough to get out.
Yeah, and that concern and that problem rises as early as level 4 there with the Tychus, you know, on the other side of the battleground, and it makes it very kind of threatening. And as you brought up, like, well, there is that dependence on SPT that they might be able to play the map with the Dahaka. And you highlighted a great point. In the early game, you get the brush talk in where you're going to diminish those returns. And I want to bring that even more back to what I was trying to talk about a little bit earlier, is Sky Temple's a battleground where you get the lead through the skirmish, but you end up holding the control through the macro. All the global will do is if you win that first fight, you absolutely are one of the most oppressive squads in the world if you have the global advantage. But if you don't have the global advantage, all that does is buy you one extra fight that Dahaka is going to have a very predictable brush talk into, and if Soap does not land the drag isolation into a kill, it likely is going to be like, I don't really care about the fact that you in fact have a brush talk opportunity, right? It's one of those weird kind of teeter-totters on Sky Temple, very different than most battlegrounds.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to say that the game is now ready, and we are going to be heading in to game number 1 between Ballistix and Super Perfect Team on Sky Temple.
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, map selection here by SPT, the last representatives in the Eastern Clash out of the Chinese region. But in the blue, Korea just fell down to Genji. Earlier today is going to be Ballistix here, where we have SDE on his Tychus. Magi is going to be on the Stukov, Zhang Ha playing Blaze, Hooligan on Muradin, and SC playing Reyna.
And on the right, it is Super Perfect Team with Melody C on Medivh, Soap on Dahaka, Misaka on Diablo, ZZH on Deckard Cain, and luckily is back on that Phoenix.
Portal play gives SPT a huge advantage on this rotation. It's going to allow them to get eye, but the fact that they didn't zone out of that tight little choke, it really moves all advantage they would have gotten in a territorial situation. Misaka not pulling the trigger there onto the shadow charge here, and so it's going to be a bit of a stalemate.
It does also mean that they didn't have to use Rush Stalker. I didn't think I heard it, so they can now rotate Dahaka down to bot lane if they wish. Gives them that rotation opportunity, unless he's dead, as we do see the gank coming in here from Ballistix. Good body blocks by Hooligan.
Oh, there goes the interrupt.
He's gone.
Yeah,
nice first blood.
Yeah, great job there by Ballistix to be able to get that choke in. It's honestly, that is, I can't help but feel like an adaptation based on the Portal level 1 play that you saw there by SPT. I feel like it was very clever, and honestly, it was a great kind of maneuver. But once again, we see why Ballistix is one of the most dominant teams in the world. They just identify that, go, hey, no brush talker. He's probably going to stick up top for one wave, then get the brush talk down, 3-man gank, get the interrupt.
Yeah, delaying the Storm Bolt as well, waiting for the exact right moment where they could either interrupt or get the kill. He was lucky and got both. So as such, first blood for Ballistix there, as we do have a very quick pause.
Should be noted, you know, kind of on that bar I set, if you will, or that kind of measure I'm going to be looking for in this game towards that bottom fight and how things happen. One Dahaka death is not going to put SPT into such a dour kind of position. What it will lead to is most likely an early brush stock use, which will be back up by the first shrine phase. It's just going to cause the rotations over that downtime of the brush stock being used to be very limited, and that is going to allow Ballistix to be as aggressive as they want to be with their 4-man, because they're never going to be afraid of the brush stock turn.
And with the lack of that brush stalk turn, like you said, it's going to allow them to potentially go more aggressive onto heroes like Medivh, who you always want to try and snipe if you can, because of course you're going to be denying those stacks, and if you can deny those stacks for as long as possible, it's going to deny an incredible amount of damage away from Super Perfect Team.
I don't know if anybody knows, I just stand here the entire time.
Yeah,
story.
He just hangs out.
It's true.
He actually, the mic's hot the whole time. It's like a quiet game.
It's just really quiet.
Yeah, it's a good, honestly, it's impressive.
Yeah, I'm like Wubby. I sit in the off lane and I point out things that are happening that are really cool, and then I hold the solo lane where there's not a lot of action. I just hope I don't get killed. I don't know if that's relevant here, but, you know.
I appreciate the attempt at the analogy.
I just feel like we spent a pretty solid amount of time breaking down the draft, a lot of the concerns here, and I wish we had gotten, you know, deep enough in the game to have something to highlight. But outside of one missed rotation towards top with a good response from Ballistix, it's kind of like, yeah, we're waiting for Sky Temple to continue here.
I mean, we did see a pretty cool Portal play. We can at least say that, able to rotate, which if they hadn't lost to Haka would have been very nice, holding that Brush Stalker to give them the rotation, get an extra wave, get more essence for Dahaka, more stacks on his level 1 regenerative tissue. The potential was there for a very good play. It was just a good reaction by Ballistix.
Yeah, it's probably one of the better, you know, go-to approaches for anybody who doesn't play, you know, if you want to play Dahaka at home. It's one of the easiest early game strategies. Go into the off lane, not matching the 5 versus 5 fight, gives you that extra wave on top, and then get that on bottom. It's just when you pull cookie cutter plays, Ballistix is gonna respond with less so cookie cutter answers.
The one thing about Ballistix for me, it's so hard, you know, to really put into words, but if you ever take the time to just watch a Ballistix replay on Sky Temple, obviously it's good if they win the game. But it's often due to the first 2 to 3 minutes of what they're doing. I mean, obviously, it was when the objective changed to 3 minutes on all the maps, you know, where things started to change, and you know, we got more of more standard play at the beginning of this year. But even before then and even now, a lot of what they do is just manipulation to set up for that. There's never a moment where they're like, oh, you know, 1 minute in, we'll maybe get a camp 2 minutes in this. It's just a matter of they set up multiple steps ahead, and they have paths for each one of them. It's great to watch.
All right, thank you very much, Jay. How you can go back to your completely silent state for the moment as we head back into the game. As the lane setup begins to happen, and Dahaka, he decided to tunnel straight back up to top. It's going to be Raider sitting in that bot lane, at least for the moment.
And so I was highlighting that the brush talk is going to be a major concern over this window if he does immediately brush talk out. And now look at this. Hooligan can invade purely because he knows that there's not going to be a threat with that rotation if Blaze wants to make his way down. Right now, Ballistix is taking advantage of not only the early kill they got, again, on the cookie cutter decision, but now they're going to abuse the fact that there's no brush talk invade capable. Looks like there was enough threat there, at least for now, so not a full invade, but I love the fact that, again, you can see this offensive play and gaining this information because you aren't afraid to die.
And we see that extra pressure coming into here, like you said. As such, the camp from Ballistix was taken significantly earlier, and they're able to move up with their 3-man to burn down the Siege Giants of SPT. So maximum value being gained here by Ballistix, and even putting some pressure onto Melody C as Misaka rotates in via tackle.
Yeah, but we got a portal there. Ballistix actually, Maki getting locked down with that root coming up from the scroll ceiling. I don't think he's going to be able to make it out. Lucky ended up hitting that auto attack in another, or excuse me, the first kill here for SPT as they're able to fight back. That is a very common rotation from Ballistix to try and siege with those Giants, but very good punishment here for SPT.
And it gives us a 1-for-1. SDE gets the minigun off onto Misaka, dropping him down to a 3rd health. Quick heals from Deckard, though, will at least regen some of that health. We see Ballistix. You can already see that value from Tychus onto a Diablo.
So Jayhow was alluding to the idea that Ballistix does a couple of things in the early game to really set up the game. Beyond the Giant rotation and the Knight rotation that they make, one thing that they do really, really well is making sure they get onto the shots as soon as possible. They very rarely leave any window of opportunity. That's not only because getting the shots faster is going to help you, it's actually because of the rotation advantage you gain for the next set of shots. And so I'm going to be keeping my eye on that, and then how much SPT does to be able to stall that out. Because you already see, we see Hooligan zoning off while Stukov's going to start it up. Blaze captures on top, and then once they capture all this on mid, make an aggressive rotation to top.
Diablo goes in. We have to be afraid of the kind of engages SPT can pull off now with that Raven Familiar coming in from from the Medivh, sorry, not from Deckard Cain. They do have Deckard Cain who can go into the Ancient Blessings, which is where they can go and get even more burst as the game comes on. But for now, it's all about Misaka trying to delay this as Dahaka is taking control of top.
Portal is going to be down, but Magi ends up getting the reveal. Stormball not landing there for Hooligan. As Misaka actually just stall it out. Misaka goes in with the Shadow Charge, hits the stun on the SDE.
They're unable to get close though, thanks to the zoning of Magi as they also force Hooligan off. In
Soap?
comes Soap. That knockback from Rainer
Portal?
just saved Hooligan's life. They portal through. Did they save his life? No! Lucky picks up the kill
But
with a counter kill on Soap.
Comes at the cost there of Soap. SDE able to hit the dash out of there. Melody C should have a portal available. Keep in mind, Blaze was up top getting the rest of the shots and securing the Knight advantage. So this is going to allow an opportunity to make a transition down if they would like to do so. Xiangha saying maybe that Knight damage is going to be a little bit more value here for the squad.
Ravens applied onto Magi. Extra damage here as Blaze is pushing hard on top. Dropping that fort very low already and is easily able to pull back. I don't know if luckily he can clear this.
Yeah, and I feel like that a lot of that came down to, again, what I was trying to show with the Hooligan moving on to the point as soon as he was, with Blaze taking that. Because once Dahaka, we saw Soap match up on Blaze, Blaze just goes, all right, well then I'm going to get the Knight clear advantage. And as long as that skirmish happens throughout mid and he does not commit to the rotation like we saw Soap commit to, then it puts it to where it's like, we're winning on the top half of the battleground. We don't really need to be concerned about mid whatsoever. But that being said, you know, even though Ballistix was able to pull ahead, they did not blow the game out of proportion. This is still in this window that I was hoping to possibly see over that bottom shrine as long as SPT can hold on a bit longer.
They're on even levels right now, even talents. It's all good for the moment. Just a side XP lead for Ballistix. Drag used onto Blaze. More to buy Soap some time, if anything. He needs some time to grab that potion and clean out the minion wave as that fort is looking rough.
Love the siege capabilities here again by Ballistix abusing the Giant rotation. Another portal coming out from Melody C, though, is going to put out that self-shield. Melody C not want to deal with too much of that. Even Hooligan willing to jump back in, ends up hitting Stormbolt, but it might cost him his life. Shadow Charge comes through, overpower, flipping him over, and that is another kill here for SPT.
Nicely done with Soap coming in. It wasn't actually required for this, and him rotating down means that Blaze will 100% grab that top fort. So now we have to see SPT use that kill they get to try and capitalize. Grab something. The pressure onto bot lane needs to start coming out because that's where the next objective's going to be, and if they can get that, they can get the counter fort, and that's where they can bring themselves back into this game.
And so Tetra here, before we get to this next shrine phase, we got to bring to the experience advantage that Ballistix has for themselves. Yes, SPT has been able to win those last couple of skirmishes, but Ballistix understood that they are going to gain more with the fort advantage, and more importantly, even if this was dead even, structures. Because they have not committed to those 1 to 2 kills here and there that aren't worth that fort, they're gaining more in experience and more in structures, and that is the name of the game here on Sky Temple. Hold up, though.
Comes through the portal, massive shove, does not land. SC, though, pulls back. The protection just too good. That crowd control from Raider and Diablo not able to, denies Misaka from able to making the play, but we're still waiting for the Dahaka to tunnel in.
Yeah, we'll see where that brush stock does come online for Soap. He's still ridding of that top wave, going to wait out at least the rest of that. A Hooligan maybe want to collapse on a Misaka, who's a bit on an island right now. Brush stock not used yet, as my screen actually goes black. Here we go.
We're back.
And I've got some eyes here. Okay, so Soap's still up in the top lane.
We have Polybomb,
There's the
by
brush
the
shot.
way. He's coming in as they try to focus onto Feast, but he pulls back. Polybomb does not give Luckily the chance to escape as the Lornado separates out Tychus as they try to focus onto Muradin. Lightning Breath coming out, though. Misaka has to cancel it, though.
Jung Ha with a beautiful bunker there, right at where Soap would end up getting that drag all the way through. It's just like easy escape once you are released from the clutches there of SPT. And with the rotation collapse down and Ballistix gaining themselves the first kill, they're going to consume a large majority of the remainder of these bottom shots. And the biggest thing to highlight is how now this is the second fort of the game to go down for SPT, whereas structures on the side of Ballistix, they have at most lost that mid-fort front wall.
Ground continues to be gained by Ballistix. Their Super Perfect team are struggling even with this global. They are almost a full level behind now, thanks to the good decision-making of Ballistix. Luckily, starts burning through the Bruiser camp. ZTH will come to help this out, but this is looking rough. That's the only fort remaining, as we just saw, and it's not looking good.
That's all I feel when I see that fort. Like, can I please just have a mule? Just like one time. Blizzard, please.
Yeah, another hero, just one. Even if it works differently, different design, more mule, please.
Knights are going to be picked up, though, for SPT. The 13 talent tier window is obviously going to be a concern. This middle fort going down. Not yet. But once it does, it's not enough for a 13 quite yet. Hooligan maybe overextending. Lornado is there. Maki, though, with the silence and the isolation. Will the portal help Misaka out?
Force of Will with the Arcade Explosion. They turn it around with the Polybomb. Isolation, Lightning Rev onto the Stukov. And they take him down, and still the kill lead for Super Perfect team, but they're still about a half a level behind.
Notice every skirmish that SPT minus the middle fort that they've been, or excuse me, middle shrine that they've been really successful on is only when there's an initiation from Ballistix, and then we see the portal counter initiation. It's very well done by SPT. I just wonder, if that was a little bit cleaner, for instance, not overextending for the middle fort that would have inevitably fall. Will that still happen? Hold up, though. Pressure towards top. Bunker is there for Hooligan, so he will be just fine.
He's able to escape bunker. Longer cooldown than it used to be, but it's still relatively short here. 48 seconds remaining. Gets a little bit of extra armor on the way out, and a single extra wave of fire.
Polybomb
is used. Lornado. Single bit of CC onto Hooligan. They ported through, but they were unable to get the right angle.
Just about there for the Master Touch value as well. For SPT. Once that comes online, the teamfight capabilities are going to get that much better.
Yep, 38 stacks. So if Ballistix want to kill Medivh, it's now or never. With this next objective coming up, it's going to be bot mid.
And notice how SPT is making the rotation down to the bottom half of the battleground. This is where things get sour. I mean, we were highlighting it, with the Dahaka being able to play the map, and this is where I was trying to point out when you fall behind, it doesn't really add too much to the battleground. Top is sieging against them. They're going to essentially have to make a desperation play. Dahaka is very predictably on bottom, and then you're going to make that, again, a very foretold kind of rotation by SPT. We'll see how Ballistix is able to deal with it here.
Total Mastery setting up one side, waiting for the other in case it needs to be used to get Misaka out of danger, but being very patient with it as he comes out of Raven form and is trying to gain that final stack to complete his Arcane Rift as he actually eats a Hooligan stun but stays alive.
Able to hold the zone. The Knight's still sieging away. So yet to make the transition down, as you can expect. Jet Propulsion goes in, lands onto 2. We see the Force of Will there, along with the Polybomb. Enough peel is there to keep everybody alive. Misaka falling low, but Soap ends up hitting the drag. Great interrupt there from SC.
There's a good silence coming in onto the Blaze. They're going to try and focus him down. Salvo comes out, only really catches the Tychus, but the damage still lands. Misaka's the target. Melody C is locked down, and he loses the stacks.
He ends up dropping the stacks, but more importantly, Ballistix is just dropping SPT members left and right. The silence to interrupt the warp. Luckily getting tracked down by SC. Rainer's Raider.
Uh-oh, that's not where you want to be. Flips in. Oh, there we go. Massive shove gets SC out.
How come every time I get a little bit of pepper, I just feel more salty? That's the one thing I just don't understand when I play against Rainer, because that was just ridiculous. Damage output there for SC is absolutely online, but with the structure advantage, experience advantage, and man advantage, Ballistix picked this boss up for themselves, likely going to be able to siege with it on the bottom half of the battleground. Will Misaka be willing to risk this?
He can dive if he wants, decides against it quite wisely, I would argue, because 16 is just around the corner. If he dies, it's a very quick 16, and as such, everyone backs off Diablo lost most of his souls earlier on. He's down to only 15 at this point, so he is a little squishy.
It's a little nitpicky, but in this type of situation, unless they're going to all-in siege with this boss, which it seems like they're too far away, I'd like to see Jungha not capture these shots. Just let the boss take as much onto the front wall as possible, and then securing as much on the risky positioning part of things as they can. They are going to make the rotation, and it seems like they're going to stick around longer. It's important for SPT to wait for the boss and then try and deny and stall out later. If they risk any fights before that time, and while boss is up, they're going to lose inevitably this keep.
Boss moves into keep range perfectly in time to prevent any shots going on to Hooligan there. As they begin trying to burn down this boss from range with the assistance of Ballistix. Everything is too risky with this defense. Rocket explosion, tiny bit of damage onto Hooligan here.
Oh man, three-man root going to be locked down there with that Decker group from SPT. Boss not going to be get cleared fast enough there by SPT. Understandably so, they don't have the best anti-siege.
No.
When you think about Medivh, Diablo, Dahaka, Deckard, every single one of those, you kind of just go, how do we do some damages here?
Yeah, PvE is not our strong suit right now.
At least not at afar. You know, they hold their own whenever they get in there, but Ballistix was zoning out very, very well there. Things are difficult for SPT now, losing that keep. More importantly, there's some damage onto the middle keep as well. Shots are just going to be raining into their base. It's on them to hit 16 and force a fight somewhere. And they have the tools. They have a Medivh. One of the only heroes in the game you can legitimately say he can just force at any point in time.
Medivh sees that this is happening. Portal is down in case Diablo needs a way out, and he does. Polybomb was dropped onto Hooligan, who is 1v3ing right now.
Double Stormbolt as well with the three-man jet propulsion. Jungha setting things up. Soap there has to end up burning the brush stock, and he is just going to be left alone. No portal left, I don't think, after the Force of Will is there.
Portal just short on timing. The Force of Will not enough to save him. And that is going to be Ballistix with yet another kill. They've already used the bunker here as they look for a keep and more kills. They get the Medivh, denying more stacks, and Misaka will drop to SDE.
Will end up going down. He might not be the only one. Look at Luckily over there. Luckily, he's going to be able to make it out. Never mind, Hooligan is just absolutely tearing things apart. He is not afraid of anything there. And with the 5 members dead, the full wipe there by Ballistix. They're not going to waste any time here. Focus onto the core. Take game 1 over SPT.
Nicely done. Good finish by Ballistix at 14 minutes. They don't even bother finishing off mid-keep. They just take down the core. And that was a good closeout. Very strong start by Ballistix.
I think the biggest thing to be looking at here over what went kind of wrong throughout that game is a lot of those early game decisions, and more importantly, the night camp rotation and the Blaze looking for that off-lane pressure rather than committing to the 4 versus 5 skirmish. It's a different approach to gaining that early game advantage for Ballistix, but it has at the core of it really the same premise. Get the structure advantage, get the experience advantage, and then forget about any other fear here for Scott.
Can never forget about anything, especially, you know, when it comes to this game. So, you know, at Ballistix, they didn't forget how to win, that's for sure. It didn't show earlier in the day, obviously a tough opponent in Gen G, but they come out strong here in game number 1.
We did see a fair amount of just absolute destruction. SPT, they were able to get a good engage or two, but Dredgy broke it down quite well. It really came down to like when they were able to get the turns with the portals or who was controlling the engage of the fights.
Yeah, and oftentimes, I mean, this isn't universal, especially when you have Medivh, but anytime you're winning skirmishes purely because it's responsive to an overextension, you can say you're probably not still winning the game. It's fair to be like, okay, they bit off more than can chew, we're able to get the punishment. Again, Medivh is one of those kind of outliers, like Zeratul Stitches is another one, but, you know, those anti-siege kind of weird-oriented heroes. So for me, I just felt like, yeah, even though we did have those moments of what felt like breath of fresh air for SPT, in the end it was still like, yeah, but where are you going to win the 5 versus 5s?
A breath of fresh air was not a lightning breath.
No, it wasn't.
That's the least fresh of airs.
Probably, but, you know, I mean, you got to give credit to SPT. I mean, it's not like they just wilted under the pressure. I mean, Ballistix obviously turned it up towards the later part of the game and kind of flexed towards the end, but they did not wilt under the pressure, and they were able to go toe-to-toe for quite a while.